It is happening. You know, we in North Carolina, we had a project that worked with Lowe's Foods. Do y'all have Lowe's Foods grocery stores here? It's a grocery store chain. And Lowe's Foods wanted to get into local food and were willing to work with the Center for Environmental Farming Systems. And so we did a whole like pilot project on what it would mean to get local foods into their distribution system. And it's happening, but it was a hot mess trying to figure it out. You know, like, yeah, it's just totally different. Local farmers want and need recognition. You know, they need name connection with their customers. And grocery stores just get all the tomatoes from everywhere and put them in one bin. And there was a lot of issues. So they ended up, Lowe's Foods ended up just accepting food from farmers. Farmers could just drive to the store and the store could buy their food. But that was a whole like policy and systems change for Lowe's Foods. So, but it's happening, and people, like tenacious people who are on, many of them on food councils, are trying to chip away at it. So those are great questions. And a lot of distributors now, big distributors, are getting into tapping into the interest in local and trying to figure out how to get in. But it's hard for them too because their systems aren't set up for it.
Too, because most of your local farmers are on a much smaller scale.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have crop failure in one area, you know, there's nothing you can.
That's right.
You have nothing to offer.
Totally. That's right. Exactly.
I'm trying to come back and sue you, but you can't produce.
Well, it's just, you know, they of course have their side where they have to have stuff in the bins to sell.
Yeah.
And if they're counting on you, and it's, I mean, it's nature, and it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of areas there that have.
That's right. And so our current food system doesn't factor in nature, doesn't have to, which is kind of crazy, but it's true. That's what a system designed around the Industrial Revolution has gotten us. It's amazing, actually, that we can do it, that we feed all these people without really thinking very much about nature.
Stuff travels on average about 1,500 miles to
Yeah.
get from.
Yeah.
But I didn't even
And
know
then they label it
in
fresh.
Florida, the oranges we get in the grocery store come from somewhere else. They ship Florida oranges out.
Yeah, that happens in North Carolina. That's especially true with our seafood. 90% of the seafood that's caught in North Carolina is shipped either to northern states or overseas.
Is that a better price?
About the same
Yeah,
as your product.
to get a better price. And they can ship it in bulk. So fishermen, getting that product into the state is pretty challenging. So there's some interesting work happening with that too, but that's a thing. So I want to just see what questions y'all have. There's the question about how food councils are being funded in North Carolina, so I'm happy to answer that. Stephen, is it Stephen? We're talking about food policy. So I'm interested in what experience you have or what questions you might have.
Well, as far as food, like I said, I'm in the military a little bit too, but I'm a personal trainer, but I have a fitness studio, so I deal with my clients with nutrition and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I have a certification in fitness nutrition. So what I do with the local foods kind of go hand in hand, and where I can kind of send my clients to certain places to go, get fresh fruits and stuff like that. Their biggest thing is nutrition when it comes to working out. Most people don't know how to eat, what to eat, like how much time they go to eat. So that's why I come in, like I said, so just to kind of help me kind of know, get more information about just food in general and like what's, the policy on food. So because like I say, just listening right now with some of the stuff with, what you're saying, like the food being shipped out, like that's wrong here, it goes somewhere else. So like I said, just being able to let them know that, hey, you need to go to certain places to get the fresh food and stuff like that instead of going really to the local store where it comes in from somewhere else and it's probably been sitting for a while or something like that. So like I said, I don't, like for the policies, I don't know too much about the policies, but like I said, as far as like this food in general, I kind of have some knowledge about, like I said, this will help me get more knowledge in that area.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks.
Can I just because I can't not share, I work with the Nebraska Farmers Union, and they actually started a farm to fitness program in support of locally owned gyms that had licensed fitness nutritionists on staff to do Nebraska Farmers Union farmer members. We're delivering fresh beef, pork, chicken, and all the produce designed to the diets that each box, each gym was, keen on, and then they would work with that and have sort of like a pre-order and delivery system, and that was through the Farmers Union. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool.
It is cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. So I think I'll answer the kind of funding and organizing question about food councils, and then I just have several examples, and I think you all might have similar or spin-off things that you've been a part of, so I'm really happy for that to be fluid and sort of see where it goes. So in North Carolina, how are food councils funded and who's leading them, I think is the question. And the answer is it looks different in different places. Not very many of those 35 food councils have a funded coordinator. I would say, I could count them, but about 5 have funded coordinators. The rest of them right now are volunteer organizations, completely volunteer. They do, by and large, have leadership teams. So people who have committed to be usually co-leads with a small sort of administrative, it's usually 2 to 4 people are kind of like this leadership team, and they lead for 2 years at a time-ish. This is kind of like, it's different in different places, but this is the broad stroke. Those who are funded through a foundation, through grants, and also through the government. So 2 of those councils are local government appointed councils. So they have some funding and some staff time through the local government. One of them has funding through the local governments, but is not a government appointed board. So that group went to the county and to every municipality in the county and asked for anywhere from $500 to $2,000 from the budget. And altogether, they got enough money to hire a part-time coordinator. And they also asked for a representative from each of those boards to be a part of the council. And so they got that. And so that's an interesting dynamic and way to sort of represent the local government, but not be a government appointed board. And then they're organized, everything from we're a county sanctioned board to a nonprofit. Most of them are somewhere in between. They're not a nonprofit and they're not appointed by the county. And that's how they want to be, most by and large. We have had one that was appointed by the county, and then similar to the state council, change in leadership at the county level. They cut off all funding like in 24 hours. That group also has an incubator farm, and the farm gates were locked. No more funding. And so that relationship has mostly healed since then, but that group is now a 501c3 nonprofit. So those sorts of things are also a reality in the government sanctioned board world.
Because I was doing some research in North Carolina, and they were saying a lot of the farmers are going to the solar panels instead of farming.
Yeah, I have an example about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, they say, they just putting up solar panels and
Yep.
they'll get the sheep to eat the grass around. They
Right.
get out of farming and going to the solar.
Yeah, so
Right, yeah, there's, we were talking about that somewhere like.
I ain't mean to cut.
no, it's great. It's a good. I have an example of a zoning ordinance that was shifted because of that.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question? What else can I add?
The other earlier part of that was like, how do you find people when you go into a new area?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who do you tap to like talk about it to initially, and then
Mm-hmm.
who are you looking for when you're trying to find somebody to participate in doing
So thus far in this work, we have gone to places that have asked for us to come.
it?
And
Was that right from the start?
there were 2 food councils that existed before we existed.
Okay.
And then when we were funded, we did a process for a few months of just going out and talking about food councils, what they are, what their impact can be, and from that, there was enough interest to, for the past 2 years, support the groups that were interested enough to kind of get a group together. When somebody has come to us and said, we would like to start a food council, we ask that they have at least 5 to 7 people who are willing to meet monthly for several months in a row before we'll come. And we say that, and we say, you know, you're gonna need more people, and so we need to know that you have a committed group and that they're willing to build this network. And then we use that whole measures sectors scenario. We have just like a spreadsheet of folks within each of those sectors that we send to the group, and we say these are folks that we would recommend that you reach out to, and that's everything from the faith community to the planning department to soil and water to the health department. You know, it's a wide list, and we invite them to reach out to those folks. And we usually, the first step is to do just an introductory meeting, and that small group will invite folks and we'll come and do a basic presentation, and then if there's enough interest, they'll go from there. So that's been our process. We recommend that folks talk with the county government sooner rather than later, even if it's just to say, we have a small group of citizens who are looking to start a food council. We want you to know that's happening. We'd love for you to be involved. Everything from that to, if you have enough of a relationship to connect with the county manager, that's great, or the city manager, who kind of has a lot of levers to pull and kind of get them on board in the beginning. Yeah. Okay. So I just want to go through some things that have happened, a wide spectrum of different things that groups have done, and we can talk about it, see where it goes. So this one, impacting long-term realities of food and farming systems, really for us has been about impacting comprehensive plans. Usually at the county level, this Catawba Farm and Food Council, it's really a coalition of 5 counties in South Carolina. And they had started off really doing a lot of that networking. They had on-farm potluck dinners just to introduce folks to farmers and what farmland is like, and just kind of re-engage. And then they made a directory of where farms and local foods were in these counties. So those are a little bit more programmatic, but it really built some excitement and some of the network. And then they decided that they wanted to, some of the long-term comprehensive plans in several of the counties were up for revision. And so as a group, these 5 counties came together and did a whole assessment of what food and farming language might look like in comprehensive plans. And then they looked through all the old comprehensive plans for all those counties. And they came up with a list of questions that they wanted answered. In what ways, if any, do these comprehensive plans support access to healthy food? How do they support farmland preservation? They had a set of questions. And they made these recommendations, and they're in the process now of getting that language passed in these comprehensive plans, which can really affect, what farmland is available and in what ways that farmland is used in the future. So,
Which group is that?
That's the top one. Catawba Farm and Food Coalition is the 5 counties together. And I have some of that language, if that's helpful, kind of the questions they asked, the proposed language, and the proposed policies that might go with that language. And then the Forsyth Community Food Consortium is a county-based council, and they got started as a consortium by hosting brown bag lunches around food monthly for like 2 years. And it was very consistently attended, and they would just have somebody come talk about something related to food in any of those sectors. And so they, again, it expanded their network from the beginning, and then became this food consortium, had a little more structure, and then they were known so well that when it was time for the comprehensive plan to come up in their county, they were actually invited to comment on it. So opposite process, but so we're seeing a lot of food councils going this route, doing some comprehensive planning with their county or region. Have y'all seen some of that? Mm-hmm. Create connections to drive greater, more aligned impact. So the one on the bottom here kind of harkens to what John was saying. Just this year in North Carolina, the state budget included funding for Healthy Corner Store initiative, which is like a more urban issue. But we had tried to get something like this passed for the past 2 years, and it had not been successful. And this year, the NC Alliance for Health really led that charge, but they contacted us when they knew what counties were really in play for shifting the vote. And we were able to connect to them with food councils in those counties, and the Alliance for Health could connect to the food council, and the food council could share with their whole network, please contact your representatives. We want to get this passed. And so that's an example of a state level legislation that was supported by a lot of different food councils.
Okay, but when it says Healthy Corner Store Initiative, was that in the urban setting or urban setting?
Yeah.
So did they actually set up healthy stores, or they put products of healthy food in the store?
Yeah, so the money is just coming now, and so it'll be implemented in a few different ways, but it can go to support corner stores in the sort of price differential to get healthy foods in the store to sell. It can also go for signage and marketing around those things in the store, so driving folks to encourage folks to buy those things.
Okay, I'm gonna be the devil advocate here.
Okay.
Now, like most urban stores, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, most urban stores are ran by I'm the Arab, the Palestinian, and they do fried food, pig feed. You know what I mean? I don't even know if you can move that product in there. You know what I mean? It has to be a culture thing because they're not geared for that. When you go to their store, they got the now ladies and all that at the counter so the kids can't miss it.
Yeah. So this doesn't necessarily shift what's already being offered, but it creates an incentive.
But the people what I'm trying to say, the people who run these urban stores, do they have, someone to speak to them? Do they have that vested interest in their customers? Because the people who run these stores and the customers is two different cultures.
Well,
Yeah, so, yeah,
I've
go
heard
ahead.
some criticism along those lines,
Yeah.
where some places where this has been implemented and sort of failed, not because of the store owners, but because the customers weren't purchasing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It has to
Because
be
like
a
you said,
culture
the culture,
connection.
that cultural
Yeah,
education of the clientele,
yeah.
not so much the
Yeah.
store
A lot
owners.
and a lot of places where the Healthy Corner Store initiatives have thrived have been where they've linked it to WIC and SNAP, because they
That way.
yeah, so the business owners like it because they get a whole new group of people in there spending money not just on what their public benefits are for, but for their regular whatevers.
Okay.
But then There's a lot of other ways. Some of the states that have done this successfully, I know, have done, you can do double your bucks if you're gonna spend your SNAP benefits on fresh produce, so you turn your $20 monthly budget into 40. So the business owners love that. So there's a lot of marketing that's being done in different states around it, and I from the little I've read about the North Carolina, I think it's gonna be really successful.
There were a lot of
businesses
pilots
really
in North
brought
Carolina.
to the process very early in the
Yeah, I was just wondering
legislation.
how it was
Yes.
coordinated.
Again, they're great questions. And when we talk about food, there's all these questions around access and culture and education. And I think there are some myths that folks who live in certain areas don't want to buy healthy food, but there are also a lot of realities about what our cultures are and what kinds of foods we want to buy. So it's a both and. I think they're great questions, and I think it has thrived in some places. It hasn't thrived in others. It won't work in every place that it is implemented in North Carolina, but I do think there were a lot of pilot programs in North Carolina, and there was a lot of research done on the front end to figure out how to implement this in a way that might be useful.
And you said just using the SNAP benefit. Because I know the store owners, they get more than $1 for the SNAP. They get, for every $1 they take in, they get $2 back from the government. So I know a lot of store owners, bring the card.
Yeah. Yeah.
Double your buck.
Yeah. So this other one on the top, this food council helped a couple of organizations double their bucks to implement some projects. So the Cabarrus Farm and Food Council has a system where they have kind of a leadership team and then a broader food council and then just the wider community. And so their system is that the core team meets every month. Every other month, the kind of food council as a whole meets, and every third month they have a community-wide meeting. And that meeting is a space to meet people and share what projects you've got going on. And through that process, they had the Rotary Club and the Parks and Rec were sharing some projects that they were trying to get funded. And those two groups found out that they were trying to get some, one was a farmer's market and one was community gardens, for a very similar space in town, and they were both applying for like $5,000 grants, which was not going to get them very far. And so the Food Council was able to bring them together and sort of have a conversation about a bigger project that could fund both of them by leveraging the little amount of money they already had. And it was a huge success, and they were able to revamp a downtown block, and now it's a farmer's market space, and it also has community garden spaces. So it's just an example of how being a convener of people can really help move projects forward.
You said that was every third month they had a meeting that was open?
Yeah.
And what were the other two? So that was a board group?
Every month, the executive team, basically the leadership team meets, and every other month, the whole council meets together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, it's working for
I
them.
like that idea too.
Right? That's the 1%, 9% maybe. It's like a way to really leverage the 1%'s energy and honor the 9%'s dedication. That's the thing we were talking about earlier. Yeah.
I really like that idea.
Yeah. They changed to that model about 2 years ago, and it's working really well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So it's 3 month cycles.
Yeah.
1 month, 2 months, 3 months. First month, second month, third month.
Right.
Starting in first.
Yeah. So quarters. So every quarter. Yeah. Okay. Shift existing policies to create opportunities for farmers and community members. So this gets at your solar farms issue, Derek. The Upper PD Farm and Food Council is a food council that comprises 3 counties just southeast of Charlotte, North Carolina. So, you know, Charlotte is very urban, biggest city in North Carolina. These 3 counties, Stanley, Union, and Anson counties, are very rural, a lot of farmland, and they have a lot of pastured animal farms here. And solar is becoming a big deal in lots of places in North Carolina. Lots of solar farms are happening. And so solar farms were coming in and starting to buy or lease and use all of this land that used to be available for pastured animal farming. And so this council got together and worked to change the zoning ordinance so that it could be a dual purpose zoning. And so now animals can graze underneath solar panels. And so both types of farms are really benefiting. And we've decreased the animosity between solar coming in and sort of this long history of pastured animal grazing. So that's a great example of an ordinance. And then the Watauga Food Council is up in kind of the high country mountains of North Carolina, and they have the town of Boone is kind of the center town, and then around that in the other municipalities are a lot of small farms. And so they've started a food hub in Boone. A couple of nonprofits got together and started a food hub, and it filled up very quickly. Farmers have been using it. They had one cold storage freezer, and it filled up immediately. And there was a lot more demand for cold storage. And so the Food Council found this out and wanted to help get the funding to get another cooler. And so they brought it to the town, and the town said, you know, the town of Boone, so not the county, but the town of Boone, and the town said, these funds are supporting other municipalities. They're supporting people that don't live in Boone. And so we are not very interested in spending our dollars when maybe other towns should be doing that. And so the Food Council sort of reconvened, got their kind of story together, brought some restaurateurs, some farmers with them, and were able to convince the town of the utility of having local farmers, more local food available to restaurateurs and people in Boone. So they were able to talk about that sort of market demand and the rural-urban necessity of local food. So they got money to buy another freezer. So small win, but a big deal for those farmers and the restaurants as well. Local food purchasing resolutions. So I only have a couple more slides, you guys. In North Carolina, we have the 10% local campaign, which is a campaign that invites anybody, individuals, restaurants, institutions, to commit to trying to spend 10% of their food budget on food that was grown, caught, or raised in North Carolina. And so these 3 councils worked with their counties to get the county to pass a 10% local commitment. So what that means, it's not, you know, it's not something that you can enforce in a major way, but what it means is that once the resolution is passed, the Food Council creates a list of places where you can purchase either catering or farmers markets, prepared food, where you can purchase those things. And all of the county agencies get that list. And so county agencies are asked to call those places first and try to buy 10% local. And so annually, the Food Council can update that list and get it back to county agencies. So that's a thing that's been happening.
Is that recent? Because I know that in several states, there have been some state Supreme Court cases about the local option at the county level for purchasing requirements. So is that happening currently in North Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
That's happening?
Yeah, yeah. And it's not it's not a
Is it if
requirement.
or better, sort of?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I just wanted to, let me see what else I have. These are the last two. So I just wanted to mention the sort of farm to school / farms to institution reality. And so I think I mentioned earlier that a lot of food councils want to do farm to school. When we work with them to set priorities, farm to school is often in the top 3. And we really encourage groups to consider doing farm to institution, some institution other than a school. For some of the reasons we talked about earlier, school food is just a complicated beast.
Do y'all have, when you say farm to institution, do y'all have, because I know, do y'all have prisons that buy from the local farmers?
Not yet, but we want to. That's one of the institutions that we're looking to work with. Hospitals we're also looking to work with. Nursing homes we're looking to work with.
County jails are different.
Yeah, so those are the kinds of places that we are encouraging folks to look to work with. There's a lot more potential for wins, even small wins, and there's a lot to be learned about what the system is really like, and that's going to help these groups when farm to school becomes something that we can tackle. And that's going to take a lot of different pieces, but this is part of it, is working with farm to institution. And so that can be everything. I think all of these can fall under that somehow. So healthy snacks in schools policies, we talked about that a little bit earlier, but that can also include local guidelines. The Charlotte Meck Food Policy Council worked with 2 school gardens to get them GAP certified good agricultural practices. That's the only way that school gardens can sell their food into a school system. And there's still a lot of issues, but you have to get GAP certified, and that is a process that costs money. And so they did it because Farm to School was one of their 2-year missions, and they've made some progress, but they're one of the councils that has a lot of, they have a dedicated coordinator, and they have a huge support base. They're also in the biggest urban center in North Carolina. So there's a lot that they have working for them. It worked, it's awesome, very exciting, big win. Community-supported agriculture incentives at work sites is one that folks are working on and are excited about. So getting farmers connected with specific organizations or institutions and having CSAs with workers there. It decreases the farmer's challenge of finding enough people for a CSA. It builds relationships with farmers and people who are working or living in that place.
Can you give maybe an example, if you have one, of an incentive at a work site? Because we love the idea too of CSAs at workplaces, so we talk about it, Steve and I are working group meetings, but I don't know if you've ever tried incentives at work sites.
I don't know if I can give you a specific example.
I mean, I'm sure if you think of it long enough with the work site, you probably can think of something. Be interested though. I mean, you can get an incentive for not, for parking. So
Right.
You should be able to get an incentive for.
Yeah,
CSA.
right. And it'd be interesting to talk to people at the work site about what incentives they'd be into.
It'd be a good project for food. I mean, it'd be a really interesting project for a food policy council.
Totally.
It seems like that's like a little P.
Yeah.
Like as loving your food as you can get.
I would put it in the benefits package,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you want to recruit new employees.
Right, that's a recruiting tool.
I mean, if you give them a CSA incentive
Yeah.
and you have a CSA that's there, they don't have to go find one, but you say, here's our
that's an
CSA.
incentive. That's an incentive.
And we'll, you have to do all the biometric screenings to get your employee paid, health insurance. Part of that could be that, you join a CSA and eat it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think you'd have to tailor it to every work site, because I know when we were in Omaha, like Google had specific incentives that they would offer
Right.
around local food. PayPal had different incentives that they would offer. The hospitals in Temple will give employees tokens to spend at the farmer's market that sets up in the lobby every week.
There's a lot of potential in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there really is. And I think all of those were made just by working through HR.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
cool. But,
And then the big P policy, the other end of that spectrum, the funnel space is the state insurance health plan. And so we're in what we consider to be long-term conversations with the state health plan folks. We get major deductions at the state health plan for saying, I don't smoke. You just click a box that says I don't smoke, and you get a significant amount of money off of your premium. And that's also true for filling out a health assessment form. And so we're really interested in working with the state health plan to do something similar for local food purchasing. And so the number of people that could affect is pretty significant, but it's also a much bigger P issue. So doing, individual work site types of local food incentives is a way for us to sort of move towards that. So it's an example of sort of those two ends. And then the last one I have are urban agriculture ordinances, which I know are probably a little bit less relevant here, but I think they're pretty common across food council work. And so I just wanted to mention some of them here. And so these groups have gotten these types of ordinances changed. Gardens on public land, bees in the city, being able to sell food that you grow in the city. All those are ordinances that have been changed by this council. The Asheville Council has worked to shift the tax rate for land that's being farmed in the city. So similar to that example that we did earlier. And then Charlotte Meck got a city ordinance changed so that they could have food trucks, and their food truck program was around food access and getting food to places that didn't have grocery stores close by. And so they had to change a city ordinance in order to be able to do that. So there's lots of, city ordinances are like the littlest big P. And so it has a really big impact. And you learn a lot about who's in charge of what and budget cycles and things like that when you're moving these things forward, which is great. It's exciting.
They said are food truck allowances.
Yes.
Like when Walmart come to this and wipe out the small, mom and pop grocery stores, and it's a place called, I think it's like Walson, Texas, right outside of Shreveport, whereas Walmart came in and they closed down. And all the local grocery stores, they closed down. So they left that little town would have almost drive 40, 50 miles now to get grocery stores. Because they can't, mom and pop, they can't open back up the grocery stores. But Walmart has that, they can open up for 2 months, they're going to be closed down. And it just left those people in a bad spot.
And those are really big P policy questions, but you can start that work in that little P,
Yeah,
because city councils make decisions on which tax incentive and tax credits that outside agencies get, and that influences those business dynamics on a day-to-day basis. And there is no more powerful way to really help shape positive health outcomes for your community than working with city and county government about those tax incentives, especially when it comes to industries that impact food and food access, because that's an enormous issue all across micropolitan America. It's a big, big deal. And all of that works because we throw public money at large institutions so that they can come in and open a Wally's World for 2 months and then go home and not lose any money. They've made tons of money, but your local economy and your local food system is derelict afterwards. And that's all a really day-to-day, going to council meetings every time they have one to discuss how those tax incentives work and transitioning those to have impact for a local mom and pop, because most of the processes around those are so burdensome that a mom and pop's company, a small entrepreneurial startup, isn't going to be able to work through that system because it's designed to fit this big industrial system, and there's no way to just launch this little teeny piece out into that. So you have to educate the elected officials and their constituents around how we can modify and reduce those barriers so that we can, you know, shift to keep those catastrophic losses from happening. But that is a local issue. That is a really, really big local issue that everybody can have a voice in. Sorry.
Yeah.
So at the Chief Meat Food Policy Council, now, where it's saying that they allowed those large trucks to come in, which was, at one time, they wasn't.
That's right. So food trucks were not allowed in Charlotte to sell food on these city streets, and they got the city ordinance changed.
Yeah.
So now they can do that. And the Charlotte Mech Food Council was doing that specifically because they were trying to get food to neighborhoods that didn't have grocery stores or healthy food available. But, you know, food trucks can also be a real economic driver. So aside from the food access issue, there's the economics of food trucks is a big deal, especially in cities, small cities. So that's another reason why folks might work to change that kind of ordinance. Okay, so I'm running short on time, so I'm not going to have you do your work in your small groups again.
Really small.
I know, totally. So I am gonna have one thing that I do want y'all to do before you go, but are there any questions, other things you want to hear about that we haven't talked about, comments?
A great group, very informative. You know, they have sort of people.
Yeah.
I didn't hear nothing from the farmer.
Yeah, you're gonna be both, you both are gonna be hearing from each other, and you both on the food policy council. Yeah, I find out a few people. And I'll need about 5 minutes towards the end.
Okay.
Just to
Okay.
wrap stuff up.
Great. Well, I want to do 2 quick things in, I don't have that much time. I'm going to ask you all to fill out one of these that is going to encourage you to think about where you could plug in. So I'm going to give you one of these pages. Maybe you can pass them around. So basically, this is what we looked at earlier. So like little p, big P issues. So I'm asking you to name an issue that is of interest to you. And that can be as broad or as detailed as you'd like. And then think about at what level you could engage right now. And maybe that's you can decide personally to set your own policy to try to buy something, local food, once a week. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's at your church or the PTA. Maybe it's at your school or workplace. Maybe you want to tackle some local, state, or federal policy.
Yeah.
If you can name what policy you would enact, you can write that, and then also just consider what it would take to shift yourself one level higher. So I just want you to take a minute to sort of think about what you could do now. Move us forward for now. These are for y'all to keep. Does anybody want to share?
I know I can work right now in the church, but I would like to go a little further. And what policy would I act? I said buying from local farmers and nutritional eating, and what resources would I need to impact to the next level? I probably would need a director of local farmers, you know, what they're selling in a nutritional guide. Because I know at this time of year, a lot of churches are getting ready, you know, they serve the homeless, you know, it's Thanksgiving time. And, you know, a lot of vegetables are included in, you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas and all that. So, you know, let's buy from local farmers. Let's support locally. you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's easier than a long line that Wally World, you know? This time with you, the holidays coming up.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that would be a great idea, you know, just since the season is coming
Mhm.
up, you know, everybody give them all this support,
Yeah.
support locally.
That's great. That's really exciting. And you know, you're supporting your community by getting food to folks who need it, but you're at the same time supporting folks who live in your community by getting them income, you know? So, you know, you're supporting your local farmers, which is,
A lot of sweet potato pie.
yeah, absolutely.
I'd be curious
Awesome.
to know what other people, just simply the issues that they
Uh-huh.
face, just as out of curiosity. I'd be interested to know what people are interested in.
Mm.
Transportation.
Mm. Mhm. What level would you work at?
Somewhere in between the wider community and institutional.
Yeah.
I'm working on a project right now with a fully subsidized housing community that, public transportation, and we've been exploring peer-to-peer transportation.
Mhm.
But what it's turning into is the lack of transportation creates an opportunity to look at how we can reverse that into on-site resourcing.
Mhm.
So what resources, from food to healthcare to whatever it is, can we shift our usual mode of thinking, which is we go to where it is? How can we bring it to this community that 90% of the residents don't have cars,
Mhm.
and there's, you know, one bus and it takes 6 hours round
Yeah.
trip to get to.
So like reverse transportation.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Cool.
How about you, Stephen?
Well, my mind was just big fitness, like fitness, nutrition, being able
Yeah.
to kind of get like families to understand that eating healthy is kind of like something that is a plus, because a lot of kids sit and lay down, a lot of them like play video games, and kind of like less active than a lot of knowledge, right? So kind of like with nutrition goes hand in hand with that. Like to be active, you know, you want to eat, you want to kind of burn off that energy. So being able to teach them to be active as well as eating right, kind of like some kind of help them more. You know, like I said, fitness and nutrition translating over into like your job, your career, school, kind of helps you focus better. Kind of you're more aware of what's going on instead of eating certain foods to the point where, like I say, exposure metabolism kind of decreases your ability to be more alert. So my biggest thing is just nutrition and fitness, kind of
Mhm.
being able to keep people, like, especially starting with the families, you know, because I know they start with the family, start with the head moms,
Mhm.
and they trickle down to the kids. So my biggest thing is being able to kind of get in the schools, be able to talk to these parents about, hey, these are food choices that you can choose for the kids instead of letting me fix every night,
Mhm.
eating hamburgers every night. Because all it's gonna do is just make them, like, it's lazy, and just want to sit around and do nothing all day. So it's like with my kid, he might say, I work out, they work out with me. We go run the kids, we go work out. But I teach them, they don't eat right all the time, but like I said, they're kids, they have a metabolism, but at the same point in time, I kind of instill in them like they get eating habits. So when they get older, and they hit that certain age where they hit their wall and they can't burn it off as quick as they used to when they were younger, they'll be able to, hey, and my dad taught me this, I can start eating this now, I've been eating right, I've been working out, so I can keep it going. So my biggest thing is trying to get in the home with the kids and the parents, and kind of showing them what nutrition and how it links in with fitness and just your everyday life.
That's great. So past your own family to figuring out how to plug in, share your education information with the wider community. Awesome.
What about you, Mr. Roosevelt?
Well, I like that CSA incentive. I was thinking,
Same one.
our
Very much.
well, our church at Christmas time gets with Max, which is a local grocery chain. And I don't think Max donates everything, but I'm sure they get it at a reduced rate. And we put together a box of, and it'll have like a ham and canned goods and whatever else. And then mainly through the local schools, we get names of families that they, teacher knows they need help, right? And that's one box, at Christmas time. What if you got corporations like Cleco and Procter and Gamble to do something like that could go on more than one time a year?
Mhm.
If their employees don't want it,
Hmm.
designate it to, some family.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool.
Mhm.
not the same, works CSA incentives.
Now, you know, of course, if that took off, you'd have to have
Yeah.
You're creating a really solid market for yourself. It's awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
I was thinking more general in the networking side. I really like the idea of the 3-month cycle of meetings. And I think that would work. It could work well for us because we're trying to look at a 7-parish region, and like we haven't even. We're a new organization, but we haven't even been to each parish yet, like visit. But we did one tour of the parish south of Lafayette, where we contacted their economic development agency and several individual farmers and a couple of community efforts. And we did like a tour where we met and visited each of these different locations. So we went to a farm, we went to a market, we went to a nonprofit, we went to and heard the economic development folks. But it could have been more. It could have been, you know, each of those people could have participated in the tour, and they could have invited more people, and we could have culminated that day or evening with some kind of conversation about what is the food system here in this area.
Could have done your needs assessment with a roadshow bus tour.
Right. Well, we thought of this as a trial run anyway,
Yeah.
so we knew we could do more even when we did it. But this gives a clear idea of how it can be more.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, y'all. Okay, well, I think y'all will get these slides. So these are just 4 kind of online resources that are hopefully particularly useful. This is our website, which has a lot of information about food councils and how we work with them to develop. Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future is sort of like the national aggregate of food policy council information. The Interaction Institute for Social Change has great information on the power of networks and how to network well. And Food Policy Action is a great go-to for statewide scorecards about how your own representatives are doing around the issues of food policy. There are many more, but these are some go-tos at a few different levels. And so I think that's it. This is another sort of go-to for me that comes from the Interaction Institute, actually, but what a simple way to live. Show up, contribute, repeat. It's like builds relationship. So I know John is gonna take it from here. I would love to hear 1 to 3 words from each of you about how this was, or what's resonating with you, or what you might do next, in 1 to 3 words.
Concrete action.
New ideas?
Yeah, I think the debate back and forth was good.
Collaborate with local pastors.
Well, I know I came in towards the end, but like I said, for me, what I take is just kind of get out and get it done. Like I said, just kind of have a go-ahead attitude and go towards what you want. It's like, it's good to talk about stuff, but you have to get out there and get it done. So that's kind of like how I take on my end, like just get out here and just get after it.
I just had so much fun.
Great. Well, thank y'all so much. I also had so much fun. Really appreciate it. John?
All right.